Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Srimad Bhagavatam Canto Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your attendance as we continue Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 16, verses 1 to 10. A new chapter, how Parikshit received the age of Kali. Today's lesson is also in honor of His Holiness Kadaman Kanan Swami, who left this world on the 9th of March. Very, very exemplary personality who lived his life very, very Krishna consciously, inspiring many, many souls. And Marge's last lecture, he actually starts off describing this chapter, the first few verses of this chapter. And we're going to be covering those verses in this specific chapter. Om Gyanatimi Vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Bhagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanuste Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Payusha Sarva Vedeka Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Prada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidwando Didatitya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which is arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actual Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshasha Rayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you unattains transcendental bliss, for your syllables rain pure love of God upon the Veda. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mad Sange Mad Goro Mad Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisances unto you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadahi Atini Chocha Taraka Hanamun Chakada Chinmam Premna Ritkatyospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintly Mr. Saintly, O uplift to the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in Mahatma Thot, accompanied with pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yuthon Vayadi Taratas Charte Swabhigna Swarahat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Surgom Rishah Damna Svena Sadani Rastaku Akam Satyam Param Dhimaihi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he's the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, destruction of manifest universes. He's directly, indirectly conscious of all manifestations and he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in delusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen in water. Only because of him the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of three modes of nature, pure, factual, vulgar, and real. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent, transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanopaisha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Mateo Mandbagya Padrita. O learned one in this age of Kali, many but short lives, a quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayana Namaskritya Narachevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudira. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very means of conquest, one should offer respectful waits not to the personality of God in Narayan, unto Narayan Isha, the supermost human being, and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai Punsa Parodharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshaja Haituke Paratyata Yatma Suprasidati. The supreme occupation dharma for humanity is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted, to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Chanayatya Vairagyam Jnanam Chayada Haitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personal Godhead Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedantita Tattva Vedas Tattvam Yajgnana Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmiti Bhagavaniti Sabhyate. Learn the transcendentals who know the absolute truth, called this non-dual substance Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shri Shosha Dhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsavaya Vipra Punyatirtan Shevana. O to wise born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great services done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Riddhantostaya Badrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor, truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment. The heart of the devotees develop the urge to hear his messages, which themselves virtues and properly heard in chant. Nastaprashu Badreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki. By regular attendance in the classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We continue Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna, welcome back. Let us cover some feedback from Canto 1, Chapter 15, verses 45 to 51. Is there anything that caught your attention, that you could remember, that you felt you need to apply in your life from last week's section? Please share that in the chat and we will discuss that. Mahimavati Radhika says, we want that personal touch of Krishna. We can get that through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada makes this wonderful point in the purport, discussing the demigods. The demigods are associates of Krishna. And the pure devotees, personal associates of Krishna, also associates of Krishna. So they are connected to Krishna, they are associated to Krishna, but both are connected to Krishna and associates of Krishna. Both are serving Krishna. But the pure devotees, they have a personal touch with Krishna. And that is the personal touch we want to aspire for. So when we serving, when we chanting, when we rendering devotional service, we should keep this aspiration in mind. I just don't want to be a devotee. I just don't want to complete my service and my vow, but I want a personal touch with Krishna. And we can meditate and contemplate on that in different ways, but personal touch means I can have a very intimate connection with Krishna. Krishna is not just some far distant Supreme Lord that is there. We know he exists, but that's it. Personal touch means we know he exists and I have a relationship, a personal relationship with Krishna. So that will manifest, that will come. But for that, we need to pay the price of sacrifice, sacrificing our life in the service of Krishna. Just like His Holiness Kadamakanand Swami, who he describes when he joined, or when he was interested in spiritual life, he went to India and he was traveling all over India, going to different temples, learning, etc. And when he met the devotees and he was speaking to the devotees, and it was a book, one of Prabhupada's books, and even while speaking to the devotees, he was busy smoking and dropping the cigarette ashes on the book, thinking, telling the devotee, yes, I know all these things, I know all these things. So coming from someone who was searching to someone who totally dedicated his life for serving Krishna, serving the devotees, and wanting to get that personal touch. And Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, don't try to see God, but act in such a way that God will want to see you. So no doubt from the activities of Maharaj, also desiring to have that personal touch with Krishna, Krishna would respond and reciprocate, because Krishna is a person. Maharaj is saying that even though there may be shortcomings, but he believes Krishna, he has firm faith that Krishna is a person, Krishna is merciful. Krishna would respond. So we want that personal touch with Krishna. Nevertheless, says Hare Krishna, everyone has their own plane to fly. It is our responsibility, because we are on the path and receive the mercy from a devotee, to share this mercy and knowledge with our families and everyone we come into contact with. What they choose to do thereafter is up to them. But don't neglect your duty to share the knowledge and mercy. Yes. And we should share according to our own creativity, our own whatever inspires us. We should try to share in that way. Each one has a different creative flair, and we all appreciate and love different aspects of devotional services. So we want to share in that way. That way we also feel inspired as we sharing with others. But no doubt we have the greatest wealth, like Maharaj was explaining in his last talk, that we have the greatest treasure. Those who are billionaires, they're not the wealthiest, but those who have Krishna consciousness, they are the most wealthiest. They have the greatest treasure. So we should understand the wealth we have and then try to share this wealth. So Prabhupada's instruction, or Prabhupada's analogy of flying the plane is very, very, very apt. Very apt. When the time of death comes, then we are flying our own plane, and we should simply try to gain help from everyone around us before the plane lifts off. So we can take guidance, we can take inspiration from Prabhupada's books, from his followers, from the community of devotees, even from materialists, we can take inspiration. And this way we build and strengthen the takeoff road, the route that the plane is going to take. We strengthen that road very, very, very solidly, a solid foundation. So when that plane is now flying off that road, there is no bumps, there is no dents, there is no issues. There's a smooth takeaway, and off it goes into the air, back to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada gives this beautiful analogy, and we should keep this analogy in our mind, in our consciousness. Sharina says, Hare Krishna, please accept humble obeisance and appreciation. We must purify the mind by constant devotional service, but we must also be conscious that we are rendering service to Krishna. Therefore, we must be present. We cannot be absent-minded in our service. Yes, that is also very, very important. Prabhupada, in one lecture, Prabhupada was talking about chanting Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada then made the point that if you're going to, so for example, we all made a vow to chant let's say minimum 16 rounds. Now, the fact that we made the vow, we're going to complete or try to complete our vow. That means we're going to spend time. So Prabhupada's making the point that if you're going to spend the time, then you might as well spend the time properly. Why waste that time if you're still going to spend the time? Rather spend the time wisely, so valuably, properly. So similarly, in devotional service, if we're going to render the service, then be conscientious of that service, be conscious of that service, be present in that service. Right? Try to offer everything you have in that service. Don't do that service half-heartedly. Don't render that service in an absent-minded way, because you are there and you're spending the time. So might as well bring your mind also in that service, because the mind is the most important ingredient in that service. Not you, not the physical, or others. Let's rephrase it. Not the body, because you are going to be there anyway. Right? So not the physical body. The presence of physical body is not the most important ingredient. It is your mind that needs to be there. Why? Because the mind, the thinking, the feeling, the emotions is all based on the mind, and we need to cultivate the mind to be Krishna conscious. Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yajimam namaskuru. We have to think of Krishna. So we need to cultivate. Therefore, the mind must be present. Nalini Kanta Prabhu says, cultivate holding onto the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. We find there are many, many verses in scripture that glorify the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotee, the spiritual master, etc. What is this? What is the understanding of taking shelter, holding on to the lotus feet of the spiritual master, or holding on to the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna? It means holding on to the lotus instructions. So holding on to the lotus feet really means holding on to the instructions of the personality. So we want to hold on to the instructions of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. We want to hold on to the instructions of the lotus feet of the spiritual master, meaning his instructions. In this way, by grabbing hold of those instructions, one is we always in association with those personalities. And secondly, it is safe and secure. I'll give you an example. When I'm flying, using a plane, and I'm flying from one place to another, then if there's like turbulence, for example, and the turbulence is, generally you find turbulence high up in the sky, but sometimes the weather is not so good, and when the plane is landing, then it's also turbulence. And we know that nothing in this material world, or let's say safety in this material world, is not 100%. There's no guarantee that every situation will be 100% safe. There's always danger at every step. So when I'm landing, or rather when the plane is landing, and I'm in the plane, then I know that the plane could crash. There could be a disaster because of the turbulence, or because of the landing, or because of the pilot, or whatever. Tire burst. There could be so many situations that could trigger. And what I do is every time the plane is landing, I meditate in my mind on holding the lotus feet of Shishinitai Gaurahari. So in my mind, I just hold onto the lotus feet, and then whatever will happen to the plane will happen. If the plane crashes, no problem. I'm safe and sound because I'm holding the lotus feet of Gonitai, and they can do as they please. If the plane lands safely, then great. Holding on to the lotus feet. Holding on to the lotus feet of the Lord was purification and greater blessings to continue serving. So yes, we need to cultivate the act of keeping the mind focused on the instructions on the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna and the Lord. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback. Let us proceed. Do I have the right? I think I got the wrong. Yep, this is supposed to be chapter 16. I scanned the wrong. Okay, so let me just give me 1 sec. I'm just going to open. So we're going to be covering chapter 16. And chapter 16 also has, so we're going to cover the first 9 verses of chapter 16. And this first section is Parikshit as an ideal ruler and punishes Kalya. That's verses 1 to 4. And then verses 5 to 9 is Shonaka Rishi's questions. Okay, so I'm going to cover the first 9 verses, not 10. Okay. Text 1. Sutta Vacha Tata Parikshit Vijavarya Shikshaya Mahim Maha Bhagavata Shashasaya Yatahi Sutyam Abhigjata Kovida Samadishan Vipramahan Gunastata. Sutta Goswami said, O learned Brahmanas, Maj Parikshit then began to rule over the world as a great devotee of the Lord, under the instructions of the best of the twice-born Brahmanas. He ruled by those great qualities which were foretold by expert astrologers at the time of his birth. So now Sutta Goswami is introducing the next personality that we're going to be hearing, and his life story, his life's pastime, which is Maj Parikshit. And here we are learning about the qualities of Maj Parikshit. In fact, this chapter 16 and chapter 17, Prabhupada is going to give us many instructions in relation to governance, in relation to how to run a country, so that at least when the devotees are in power in control of a country, like in government position, they can share these instructions and try to implement these instructions. Here we are learning about Maj Parikshit, who was a Mahabhagavat, which means that he was a great devotee. So he was a king who's a Mahabhagavat. And this is the best king you can get, a king who is a Mahabhagavat. You can't get a better situation than a king who is a Mahabhagavat. You can get a king who is a Maharascal, and that is disastrous. On the converse, you can get a king who is Mahabhagavat. He is a devotee, but he is rendering his service as a king. And what's interesting that in this verse, Sutta Goswami is saying, even though Maj Parikshit was a great devotee, he was still under the instructions of the best of twice-born Brahmans. So even Maj Parikshit, as a great devotee, was taking guidance from the Brahmanas. He ruled by those great qualities, which were foretold by the expert astrologer at the time of his birth. If we remember, the astrologer gave many of the different qualities of Maj Parikshit, and those qualities he exhibited and ruled the planet by. Prabhupada in the purport says, at the time of Maj Parikshit's birth, the expert astrologer Brahmanas foretold some of his qualities. Maharaj Parikshit developed all those qualities, being a great devotee of the Lord. When astrological chart is created or read, naturally the Brahmanas were able to say, okay, this person is going to have these qualities. But it does not mean that that person will naturally have those qualities without doing anything. No. The qualities have to be cultivated, have to be developed. Prabhupada says here, Maharaj Parikshit developed all those qualities. It's not like they just mystically appeared. That's why, for example, parenting and raising children is very important with both parents. From the father, the child develops the ability of efficiency. And from the mother, the child develops values. So the qualities of Maharaj Parikshit were developed by the support of his parents and those around him. Prabhupada also says that a child is not, you can't bring up a child in solo. You have to bring up the child in a community. So that means the whole community directs and helps the child to develop these qualities, which are very, very important. End of the month, I'll be doing a Ramayan series in Durban. And in preparation, in preparing those seminar series, it's described in Ramayana. Lord Krishna, Lord Ramachandra appears in this world to teach these different qualities. What are the qualities that human beings need to live by? Because in this world, we find people putting more emphasis into valuables instead of into character, into quality, the qualities of individuals, into the value of the person, in terms of what qualities does he bring, what qualities does he exhibit. So here also in the Bhagavatam, we are hearing about the qualities of Maharaj Parikshit. Then Prabhupada continues, the real qualification is to become a devotee of the Lord. And gradually all good qualities worthy of possession develop. Krishna Eka Sharana, in there's 26 qualities of a devotee. And one of the principal quality is Krishna Eka Sharana, to surrender to the Supreme Lord, to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. When you become a devotee of Krishna, when you surrender to Krishna, then also the other qualities develop. So one is by the cultivation of the parents, we get good qualities. By our association, we get good qualities. And then by our devotional practice, we develop good qualities. Naturally, by surrendering to Krishna and practicing Krishna consciousness, because the process of Krishna consciousness purifies the soul, then, and it's purifying all the impurities of the mind, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, then the real qualities of the soul slowly begins to manifest. When one is completely purified, then the soul's brilliance and all its wonderful spiritual qualities naturally manifest. Maharaj Parikshit was a Mahabhagat, or a first-class devotee, who was not only well-versed in the science of devotion, but was also able to convert others to become devotees by his transcendental instructions. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, when the residents of Kulinagram, when they approached Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how to recognize a devotee. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to describe, and every year for 3 years consecutively, they asked the same question, and each year Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave them a different answer. The final answer on the 3rd year, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the advanced devotee, he describes, well, first he says the devotee who chants, just the person the human being who chants just one time, or a devotee who chants just one time, he's the best among the devotees. Then the next second-class devotee is one who constantly chants. And the best of all devotees is he who, by his chanting, inspires others to chant. So Maharaj Parikshit was not only well-versed himself in the science, was practicing himself, but he was able to convert others to become devotees by his instruction. So no doubt, a very, very advanced devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was therefore a devotee of the first order, and thus he used to consult great sages and learned brahmanas who could advise him by the Shastras how to execute the state administration. He was a great devotee of the first order, and thus he used to consult great sages and learned brahmanas how to execute the state. He didn't think, oh, I'm a first-class devotee, I don't need guidance, I don't need advice from the brahmanas. No. Prabhupada is saying that he was first class, and because of being first class, because of being first order, that led to him also consulting great sages and learned brahmanas how to administer from the scriptures. So as advanced devotee, he took advice on how to administer. Such great kings were more responsible than modern elected executive heads because they obliged the great authorities by following the instructions left in the Vedic literatures. There was no need for impractical fools to enact daily a new legislative bill and to conveniently alter it again and again to serve some purpose. The rules and regulations were already set forth by the great sages like Manu, Yajavalkya, Parashar, and other liberated sages, which and then enactments were all suitable for all ages in all places. Therefore, the rules and regulations were standard and without flaw or defect. Kings like Maharaj Parikshit had their council of advisors, and all the members of that council were either great sages or brahmanas of the first order. So this is a very, very important instruction by Prabhupada. Rulers, kings, leaders, they don't need to create new bills and legislative rules to manage the government, the country. All they need to do is go to the Vedas, because in the Vedas, all the great sages and personalities who ruled according to how Krishna wants this planet to be ruled has already been laid down. In the Vedic tradition and Vedic history, there are hundreds and hundreds of kings who lived according to the guidelines of Sanatana Dharma, of Krishna consciousness. And if we take, for example, Lord Ramachandra himself, who came as a ruler. So in Ramayana, we find so many instructions on how to rule the kingdom. And then we find Yudhishthira Maharaj, we find in the Mahabharata, so many instructions how to rule, like that. So many sages. Manu himself, the father of mankind, has laid down the rules of how to run a country, all the different rules that are there in terms of different situations. So Maharaj Yudhishthira would take advice from the sages who were learned in these instructions. So we really don't need to invent the wheel, reinvent the wheel. The guidelines is there. We simply have to access and apply. And there may be some practical implementation that needs to be there, different bills that may have to be there according to time, place, and circumstance. But even then, scripture would guide what to do and how to do. Very, very simple. Therefore, the rules and regulations were standard and without flaw and defect. Because why? It's coming down in disciplic succession. It's coming down from self-realized souls. So we simply have to implement. Life is not new. It's not like we are living Kali Yuga the first time, or we're living in this world the first time. No, Life has been there eternally. Trillions and trillions and trillions, practically since time immemorial, there has been life. And therefore, the situation we find ourselves in is not new. The situation that we find ourselves in, and practically in every situation, no matter what the situation is, every single situation that every single person is going through in this world has been experienced previously through self-realized souls who have shared how to go over these challenges again and again and again. So we simply have to be open to such advice and then apply the advice for it to have full effect. Kings like Maharaj Parikshit had their council advisors, and all members of that council were either great sages or brahmanas or the first order. They did not accept any salary, nor had they any necessity for such salaries. The state would get the best advice without expenditure. They were themselves Samadarshi, equal to everyone, both men and animal. They would not advise the king to give protection to men and instruct him to kill the poor animals. Such council members were not fools or representatives to compose a fool's paradise. They were all self-realized souls, and they knew perfectly well how all living beings in the state would be happy, both in this life and in the next. They were not concerned with the hedonistic philosophy of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. They were philosophers in the real sense, and they knew well what is the mission of human life. Under all these obligations, the advisory council of the king would give correct direction, and the king or executive head, being himself a qualified devotee of the Lord, would scrutinizingly follow them for the welfare of the state. The state in the days of Maharaj Yudhishthira, Maharaj Parikshit, was a welfare state in the real sense of the term, because no one was unhappy in that state, be he man or animal. Maharaj Parikshit was an ideal king for the welfare of the world. If our leaders read this, they'll think, really? Can't be serious, right? I mean, there's no way man and animal will be happy. Well, man and animal won't be happy when there's exploitation, when there's no Krishna consciousness, when the focus is you, when the focus is sense gratification, when the focus is everything and anything besides the Supreme Personality of God. Because these pure devotees were surrendered to the Supreme Lord, and they understood that they simply administering on behalf of Krishna. Krishna owns everything. Everyone is Krishna's property. And the citizens, the animals, the property that I have, all belongs to Krishna. And therefore, all I need to do is use everything for the pleasure of Krishna. With that as the focus, then no doubt everyone under those kings were happy. Also, we will hear Prabhupada describing how did Maharaj Parikshit keep the men and animals, or especially the men, especially his praja, his citizens, happy. Text 2. Sa utarasya tanayam upayema iravatim janame jayadim chaturas tasyam utpadayat sutan. King Parikshit married the daughter of King Uttara and begot 4 sons, headed by Maharaj Janamejaya. Purport. Maharaj Uttara, so this is different. The name Uttara, remember we have Uttara, who is the mother, and Maharaj Uttara is a personality Uttara. So Maharaj Uttara was the son of Virat and maternal uncle of Maharaj Parikshit. Iravati, being the daughter of Maharaj Uttara, was the cousin sister of Maharaj Parikshit. But cousin brothers and sisters were allowed to get married if they did not belong to the same gotra or family. In the Vedic system of marriage, the importance of Gotra or family was stressed. Arjuna also married Subhadra, although she was his maternal cousin sister. So Gotra means like your lineage that you're coming in. Different sages would have their different lineages, and different kings would have their different lineages. So in this way, in Vedic system, they would keep like a track record, like a family tree. And that family tree would obviously be connected to specific lineages. And this way, they would want to be, they want to get married to someone who's obviously in a different lineage, in a different gotra. Janmejaya, one of the Raj Rishi kings and the famous son of Maharaj Parikshit. His mother's name was Iravati, or according to some, Madravati. Janamejaya begot two sons of the name Jashantika and Shankukarna. He celebrated several sacrifices in the Kurukshetra pilgrimage site, and he had three younger brothers named Shrutasena, Ugrasena, and Bhimasena. 2. He invaded Takshashila, Ajanta, and he decided to avenge the unlawful curse upon his great father Maharaj Parikshit. He performed a great sacrifice called Sarpa Yagna to kill the race of serpents, including the Takshaka, which had bitten his father to death. On request from many influential demigods and sages, he had to change his decision to kill the race of snakes. But despite stopping the sacrifice, he satisfied everyone concerned in the sacrifice by rewarding them properly. In the ceremony, Mahamuni Vyasadeva also was present, and he personally narrated the history of the battle of Kurukshetra before the king. Later on, by the order of Vyasadeva, his disciples, Vaishampana narrated before the king the subject matter of Mahabharata. He was much affected by his great father's untimely death, and he was very anxious to see him again. And he expressed his desire before the great sage Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva also fulfilled his desire. His father was present before him, and he worshipped both his father and Vyasadeva with great respect and pomp. Being fully satisfied, he most munificently gave charity to the Brahmanas present at the sacrifice. So Prabhupada obviously sharing some history of Maharaj Parikshit's son, and the tradition or the quality of Maharaj Parikshit was magnanimous, and it was extremely munificent in giving charity, was also cultivated in his sons. So here we see also King Janmejaya and also Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Yudhishthir, all these great kings, they gave the Brahmanas great charity. That is why the Brahmanas didn't have to ask for salary. And when the Brahmanas are taken care of, then naturally the cows, the Brahmanas, were very important for the peace and prosperity of the society. When they're taken care of, then the citizens will automatically be taken care of. When the Brahmanas are exploited, the cows are exploited, and then the elderly, the children, the women are exploited, then society is doomed. Text 3. Ajaharasva medam strin gangayam buridakshinam sharadvatam gurum kritva deva yatrakshi gocharam. Maharaj Parikshit, after having selected Kripacharya for guidance as his spiritual master, performed 3 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Ganges. These were executed with lavish rewards for the attendants. And at these sacrifices, even the common man could see demigods. So if people want to see demigods, it's not like, how come I can't see the demigods right now? That means they don't exist. No, they exist. If you want to see the demigods, then you have to follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit. You should also be doing, well, firstly, you have to be qualified. That means a great devotee. And by performing horse sacrifices, like Maharaj Parikshit, the demigods would automatically appear. Prabhupada in the purport says, it appears from this verse that interplanetary travel by the denizens of higher planets is easy. In many statements in the Bhagavatam, we have observed that the demigods from heaven used to visit this earth to attend sacrifices performed by influential kings and emperors. Now, this is 5,000, say 4,500 years ago, 5,000 years ago. So we're not talking about like trillions of years ago. This was happening even 5,000 years ago. Herein also we find that during the time of the horse sacrifice, horse ceremony of Maharaj Parikshit, the demigods from other planets were visible even to the common man due to the sacrificial ceremony. The demigods are not generally visible to common man, as the Lord is not visible. But as the Lord, by his causeless mercy, descends to be visible to the common man, similarly, demigods also become visible to common man by their own grace. Although celestial beings are not visible to the naked eyes of the inhabitants of this earth, it was due to the influence of Maharaj Parikshit that demigods also agreed to be visible. The king used to spend lavishly during such sacrifices, as a cloud distributes rain. A cloud is nothing but another form of water, or in other words, the water of the earth transformed into clouds. Similarly, the charity made by kings in such sacrifices was but another form of taxes collected from the citizens. But as the rain falls down very lavishly and appears to be more than necessary, the charity made by such kings also seems to be more than what the citizens need. Satisfied citizens will never organize agitation against the king, and thus there was no need in changing the monarchical state. Even for a king like Maharaj Parikshit, there was need of a spiritual master for guidance. Without such guidance, one cannot make progress in spiritual life. The spiritual master must be bona fide, and one who wants to have self-realization must approach and take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master to achieve real success. So due to the power and influence, devotional situation of Maharaj Parikshit, by his mercy, blessing, potency, even normal common men could see the demigods. And he also, as Prabhupada is sharing, as a king, in order to do the sacrifice, he had to obviously acquire a lot of wealth. So that was coming in the form of taxes. But then as part of the ceremony or sacrifice, he also gave back in charity. And in this way, he was reciprocating and supporting the Brahmanas. This way, getting the blessings of the Brahmanas. Also in the kingdom, naturally, the king was like a father providing for all his children. So it wasn't this type of exploitative mentality we get in today's world, where the government taxes people to death and they basically enjoy the taxes. They don't, or they may give, they may give 10, 20% back and that's it. They don't use all the wealth they've accumulated in supporting the country or the citizens. So in this way, there's an imbalance. And then Prabhupada also makes the point that the guidance of a spiritual master is very, very important. And we see in our life the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, the guidance of Srila Prabhupada's disciples and followers is very crucial. Right? Those who are practicing. So no doubt Prabhupada is like the preeminent Shiksha Guru for everyone, which means his instructions should be the foundation of everyone's spiritual practice. Prabhupada has given so much instruction, so much guidance in his purports, in his lectures. It's inconceivable. And without that guidance, we would definitely not make any tangible progress. Text 4. Nijagra ojasavira kalim digvijayai kvachit nripalinga daram sudram ganantam gomita mitunam pada. Once, when Maharaj Parikshit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Sudra, disguised as a king, hurting the legs of a cow and a bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishments. So now we are hearing about Kali, who has appeared, and here Kali is introduced not as a demigod, and not as Kali himself, but as a king, or as Kali disguised as a king. And this is again very instructive. In Kali Yuga, we're going to get the agents of Kali who are disguised as kings. We're going to get leaders who are disguised, or under the guise, or rather we're going to Kali under the guise of leaders, kings. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also said there'll be Kalicha Chelas, which means even devotees who are dressed as devotees, but are agents of Kali. Why? Because Kali wants his age to dominate, his values to dominate. This is his age. This is the age of Kali Yuga. So he's rightfully the ruler of this age, presiding, governing demigod of this age. But at the same time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared in this world and has benedicted this world with the blessing of Krishna consciousness. So that blessing is continuing, and it will continue, as Prabhupada says, at least for the next 10,000 years, right? When at the same time Kali is not going to stop. Kali is going to keep spreading his wings, his centers, his missionaries. They're going to keep spreading their values, their destructive values. At the same time, the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will also be spreading Krishna consciousness. And there will be this battle between the agents of Kali and the agents of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada in the purport says, the purpose of a king's going out to conquer the world is not for self-aggrandizement. Maharaj Parikshit went out to conquer the world after his ascendance to the throne, but this was not for the purpose of aggression on other states. He was the emperor of the world, and all small states were already under his regime. His purpose in going out was to see how things were going on in terms of the godly state. The king, being the representative of the Lord, has to execute the will of the Lord duly. There is no question of self-aggrandizement. Thus, as soon as Maharaj Parikshit saw that a lower class man in the dress of a king was hurting the legs of a cow and a bull, at once he arrested and punished him. The king cannot tolerate insults to the most important animal, the cow, nor can he tolerate disrespect for the most important man, the Brahmana. Human civilization means to advance the cause of Brahmanical culture, and to maintain it, cow protection is essential. There is a miracle in milk, for it contains all the necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievements. Brahmanical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the quality of goodness. And for this, there is the prime necessity of food prepared with milk, fruits, and grains. Maharaj Parikshit was astonished to see that a black Sudra dressed like a ruler, was mistreating a cow, the most important animal in human society. The age of Kali means mismanagement and quarrel. And the root cause of all mismanagement and quarrel is that worthless men with the modes of lower class men who have no higher ambition in life come to the helm of the state management. Such men at the post of a king are sure to first hurt the cow and the Brahmanical culture, thereby pushing all society towards hell. Maharaj Parikshit, trained as he was, got the scent of this root cause of all quarrel in the world. Thus, he wanted to stop it in the very beginning. So we can see, because this did not, obviously the protection of Maharaj Parikshit did not continue, then it's in Kali Yuga, this type of mismanagement and quarrel has just become more and more rampant all across the globe. We can see the root cause was the destruction of Brahmanical culture and exploitation of the cows, killing of the cows, not protecting cows. When that culture is destroyed, then the main foundational fiber that protects and nourishes human society obviously starts to destroy everything that's built on the principles of Krishna consciousness. 5. Shonako Vacha Kasya Hetor Ni Jagra Kalim Dvi Digvi Jayan Ripa Rideva China Drik Sudra Kausham Gam Ya Padan Hanat Tat Katayatam Mahabhaga Yadi Krishna Katam Shrayam. Shaunak Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of Sudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow of the leg? Please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Krishna. So Shonaka Rishi is interrupting the discussion, and he's inquiring now. First question is, why didn't Maharaj Parikshit just kill this personality? Why did he let him go? And if the question extends that, please describe the situation if it relates to the topic of Krishna. So that is very, very important. We don't want to hear everything and anything, but we do want to hear everything if it's related to Krishna. So that's a very good practice. If something is connected to Krishna and it's going to enhance your devotional service and devotional life, then it is good to hear. If something is not related to Krishna and it's not going to nurture your devotion, then as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj says, you tell them, please stop right there, go into the closet, complete what you want to say, and then come out. Because then it's not worth hearing. Why? Because if it's not related to Krishna and it's not going to help your devotional kripa, then it's going to have a converse response. It's going to destroy your devotional kripa. And as spiritual practitioners of Krishna consciousness, our goal is to keep cultivating and nurturing our kripa of devotion. Just as a businessman who, if he's a genuine businessman, his only purpose is to make profit. He is not going to firstly go into any business deal where he's going to make a loss. And if he has started a business and he finds that this business he's currently in is slowly going into a loss, he's going to readjust his strategy. He's going to review the products that he's selling, because he is a businessman, and a businessman means you're in business to make money. Similarly, our business is we want to be Krishna conscious. So therefore, anything that we come in contact with, we should review, like the sages, like Shonaka Rishi is inquiring. Within ourselves, we should ask this question. In this situation, in terms of, let's say, my involvement, me receiving some information, is that related to Krishna? Is it going to nurture my devotion? If it's not going to nurture my devotion, respectfully say thank you, but no thanks. I'm busy, I need to go. We'll chat later. Do the disappearing act. Why? Because it's the best thing for you, and it's also the best thing for the other person or the situation. It is not helping the devotional creeper. And we want to do everything so that as a businessman, he's always worried about the profits. As aspiring Krishna conscious servants and devotees, our goal is to make sure that we always are interested in increasing our pleasure to Krishna, increasing our devotional credits, and not destroying them. Shonaka and the rishis were astonished to hear that the pious Maj Parikshit simply punished the culprit and did not kill him. This suggests that a pious king like Maj Parikshit should have at once killed an offender who wanted to cheat the public by dressing like a king, and at the same time daring to insult the purest of the animal, a cow. The rishis in those days, however, could not even imagine that in the advanced days of the age of Kali, the lowest of the Sudras will be elected as administrators and will open organized slaughterhouses for killing cows. So Kali's appearance right at the beginning of Kali Yuga, disguised as a Sudra, disguised as a king, is the sign and the indication the Prabhupada is making here, that in the advanced days of Kali, of the age of Kali, the lowest of Sudras will be elected as administrators and will open up organized slaughterhouses for killing cows. And we see since then, this has become more and more and more ripened, practically across the globe. Anyway, although hearing about a Sudraka was a cheat and an insult of a cow and was not very interesting to the great rishis, they nevertheless wanted to hear about it, to see if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. So as I was explaining, it's, if somebody had to tell you, Maharaj Parikshit, he was traveling and who he met? He met a Sudra who was disguised as a king. Naturally, you would want to inquire, well, what happened next? Please tell me what happened next. So the Shonaka and the rishis, they heard the incident, they were curious. Now they know Maharaj Parikshit is a devotee, right? So here we're talking about even a devotee encountering a situation. It could be any situation that pricks our ears up to say, I want to hear more. But the lesson is, nevertheless, they wanted to hear about it if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. So is it relevant in my spiritual practice for me to continue to hear? I've got the introduction. Do I want the content? That we need to personally ask ourselves, because very often the content is given and we do not even think, is this really helpful? Is all this content that I'm getting really relevant for my practice? Is it going to help my chanting? Is it going to help me come in contact with Krishna to get that personal touch with Krishna? Or is it damping? Is it putting water on that fire of that aspiration of getting Krishna, personal darshan of Krishna, personal or pleasing Krishna? What is it doing? So we have to always inquire, and therefore cautiously and carefully choose our association, so that we do not go in the direction of displeasing Krishna or not hearing anything not related to Krishna. They were simply interested in the topics of Lord Krishna. For anything that is dovetailed with the narration of Krishna is worth hearing. There are many topics in the Bhagavatam about sociology, politics, economics, cultural affairs, etc. But all of them are in relation with Krishna. And therefore, all of them are worth hearing. Krishna is the purifying ingredient in all matters, regardless of what they are. In the mundane world, everything is impure due to its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. So if a situation genuinely, sincerely is there for glorifying the Supreme Lord, then we can hear. Otherwise, not. 6. Atavasya padambojo makaranda lihamna satam kim anye asad alapair ayusho yad asad vyaya. Or please speak on the topic related to the devotees of the Lord, who are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which are simply waste, which simply waste one's valuable life? Now we are getting an extension to the previous verse. Is it related to Krishna? Yes. Okay, then I want to hear. Is it not related to Krishna? No, it's not related to Krishna, but is it related to the devotees of Krishna? Yes. Okay, then I want to hear. Just like we should be hearing about the glories of Krishna from the Bhagavad. We should also be hearing about the glories of Srila Prabhupada, because why? It is related to Prabhupada, who's related to Krishna. So in this way, hearing about the devotees, hearing about the Supreme Lord, this is beneficial. But any other topic, now at work, that may be a different situation. You are duty bound. If your boss calls you in to say, I want to tell you about this new product, you can't say, well, is it related to Krishna? Then only I'm going to hear. No, because you're duty bound at work. That is, responsibility that you have to take, and you have to obviously hear that. But if there's prajalpa, if there's gramya katha, if there's village talk, if there's rumors, those things you have a choice not to hear, because you are not duty bound according to your Varana ashram to hear that. For that, you have to use this understanding that if I hear gramya katha, village talk, or prajalpa, or rumors, etc., then what is the use of that topic? Because it simply wastes one's valuable time. And time is very precious. We don't have much time. In fact, time and tide does not wait for anyone. Time ticks very, very quickly. Before you know it, you'll be old. Before you know it, you'll be lying on your deathbed. So we don't want to waste valuable time. Human life is very precious, and human time that we've received is very precious. So we want to use our time valuably. That means in relation to Krishna. What? Lord Krishna and his devotees are both on the transcendental plane. Therefore, the topics of Lord Krishna and his pure devotees are equally good. The battle of Kurukshetra is full of politics and diplomacy, but because the topics are related to Lord Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita is therefore adored all over the world. There is no need to eradicate politics, economics, and sociology, etc., which are mundane to mundaners. To a pure devotee who is actually related with the Lord, such mundane things are transcendental if dovetailed with the Lord or his pure devotees. We have heard and talked about the activities of the Pandavas, and we are now dealing with the topics of Maharaj Parikshit. But because all these topics are related to Lord Shri Krishna, they are all transcendental, and pure devotees have great interest in hearing them. We have already discussed this matter in connection with the prayers of Bhishmadev. Our duration of life is not very long, and there is no certainty of when we shall be ordered to leave everything for the next stage. So 100 years is not a long time. Challenges because of Kali Yuga and because of the Kali Yuga souls who are appearing in this time, you most likely will not get 100 years. 75, 80, if you're lucky. The average lifespan is decreasing, 65. In some countries, even less. The more sinful the souls of Kali Yuga become, the less short or the shorter their lifespan will be. So the point is, our life is very short. Now, that being said that our life is very short, the challenge we have is we don't know whether we're going to live that full duration. We may die tomorrow. We may die right now. So that is the challenge. And therefore, Prabhupada says, thus, it is our duty to see that not a moment of our life is wasted in topics which are not related with Lord Krishna. Any topic, however pleasant, if not worth hearing, is not worth hearing if it is devoid of its relation to Krishna. So this should become our guiding principle in discussing topics, speaking, in conversation with others. Is it related with Krishna? If it is, great. If it's, and related means pleasing Krishna. Topics which are favorable, anukul. Because you can get topics which are related to Krishna, just like Kamsa and his associates. So if Kamsa's associates come to Kamsa and says, hey, Kamsa, let's speak about Krishna. Right? And Kamsa is going to go and speak about Krishna. Yeah, I'm going to kill him and I'm going to do this with him. And, he's a rascal. And the associates are saying, yeah, this is all relation to Krishna. The Bhagavatam says as long as it's in relation to Krishna, we should hear about it. So Kamsa, please tell us more. That is not what the Bhagavatam is revealing. Okay. Yes, it should be related to Krishna, but as Sri Sukadev Goswami, as Rupa Goswami in Nectar Devotion instructs, it should be anukulyena and Krishna anushilam. It should be anukul, it should be favorable. Favorable for Krishna and favorable intent from our side should be there. Kamsa did not have favorable intent. He had ill intent. So therefore, hearing from Kamsa about Krishna, that is not favorable. Okay, we want to hear it from the pure devotees. Like Prabhupada gave the example of a snake. When the snake touches milk, that milk is not nourishing. Even though milk itself is nourishing. Prabhupada just said it's good for the brain, it's good for spiritual practice. But when it's touched by the lips of a serpent, it's not beneficial. So we don't want to hear any topic touched by the lips of envy, lips of ego, of exploitation, of condemnation, etc. We want to always hear the glories coming from a favorable source and favorable intent. The spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, the eternal abode of Lord Krishna, is shaped like the whorl of a lotus flower. Even when the Lord descends to any one of the mundane planets, he does so by manifesting his own abode as it is. Thus, his feet remains always on the same big whorl of the lotus flower. His feet are also as beautiful as the lotus flower. Therefore, it is said that Lord Krishna has lotus feet. A living being is eternal by constitution. He is, so to speak, in the whirlpool of birth and death, due to his contact with material energy. Freed from such material energy, a living entity is liberated and is eligible to return home, back to Godhead. Those who want to live forever without changing their material bodies should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees. So that is Prabhupada's power statement right at the end of the purport. Those who want to live forever without changing material bodies should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees. Implying, if you listen to anything else, you will take birth again. You will not live forever in the eternal kingdom of Krishna. You'll come back to this place of birth and death. So Prabhupada is warning, giving us the warning, heeding us in the right direction. Now, we may be habituated, and that's second nature, but we should cultivate a good practice. And this is the good practice. We want to cultivate this wonderful practice. Try to keep ourselves in the association, in good association, so that we can always hear the topics related to Krishna. 7. Shudra yusam nrinam anga martyanam krit martanyam ritam ichatam ihapa bhuto bhagavan mrutyum samitra karmani. O Sudha Goswami, there are those amongst men who desire to become free from death and get eternal life instead of a short life. They escape the slaughtering process by calling the controller of death Yamaraj. Purport. The living entity, as he develops from lower animal life to higher human being, gradually to higher intelligence, become anxious to get free from the clutches of death. So from animal to a higher animal, to a human, to a higher human, to a most intelligent human, the evolution of elevation in terms of intelligence from a lower to a higher species is how can I become free from the clutches of death? Now, if you look at animals, they cannot find a solution to this problem. An animal is practically helpless. Just like if you say an ant, that ant is practically helpless to inquire about death. It does not know that you as a person can immediately kill. The ant does not know that it can be killed immediately by you as a human being. As the animal evolves to a higher species coming to a human form, if the human being also does not keep evolving its intelligence to answer this question and resolve this anxiety, then it means a human being is also acting like an animal. Human being means having the capacity of greater intelligence to solve this anxiety, how to get free from the clutches of death. Modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge, but alas, the controller of death, Yamaraj, is so cruel that he does not spare even the very life of the scientist himself. The scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of scientific knowledge becomes himself a victim of death when he is called by Yamaraj. What to speak of stopping death? No one can enhance the short period of life even by a fraction of a moment. So this is very, very revealing truths. In today's scientific advancement, they talk about we can extend life. Use this ointment and you'll live longer. live like this and you live longer. Now, it is true that you can reduce your lifespan. And I will explain how. It's also true that you can extend your lifespan. But technically, as Prabhupada is saying here, you cannot stop death. Extending life does not mean stopping death. So first, I'll just share a little in terms of life, in terms of duration. So scripture, and I'll use the basis of 100 years, because it's explaining Kali Yuga, men are endowed with 100 years of lifespan. In the previous age, Dwapara Yuga, it was 1,000. In the previous age, Tetra Yuga, it was 10,000. And in Satya Yuga, it was 100,000. So that was generally the duration of lifespan of every living entity on the planet during that period. So let's take Kali Yuga, 100 years. If you are living 100 years, it means you are given a lifespan of 100 years, quantified or evaluated, calculated in relation to your breaths. So 100 years, if I take, for example, number of breaths, let's say if one breath of exhalation and inhalation is say 4 seconds. So 100 years divided by 4 seconds is so many number of breaths, and that's the total number of breaths every single one of us are given equally. As soon as you are born in Kali Yuga, that's the number of breaths you are given. Okay, set. Everybody has that same number, whatever that you can work, you can do the maths. How many breaths that is. So let's say, hypothetically, let's say that's 1 million breaths. Everybody's given 1 million breaths. Now, if you use up the breaths faster, you live shorter than somebody who's using the breaths for a longer period. So for example, a yogi, Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita talks about, and Krishna talks about the Gita, how the yogi tries to retain the incoming and outgoing breath. So he tries to, you'll see many yogis who do pranayama, etc. They would, take one breath in and they hold it. And after some time, they let it go very slowly. So they would take one breath of inhalation, retention, and exhalation, maybe say 2 minutes. A normal person would breathe 4 seconds in and out. So the yogi really extended his life far longer because he's taking one breath over a longer period. Like that, the quicker you use your breaths, the shorter the lifespan. How can you use up your breaths? Scripture says, firstly, your past karma can reduce your breaths, which means you're given a certain quota and karma says, oh, sorry, you just abused your breathing in your previous life. And therefore, because you exploited your breathing in your previous life, we're just going to halve it for this life. And immediately, your number of breaths are halved. Then consider if you become angry or you fearful. When somebody becomes angry, their breathing becomes erratic. When someone becomes fearful, their breathing becomes erratic. They breathe faster. When you're in a fearful situation, you start to breathe faster. So in those situations, because you're breathing faster means you are using up more of your breaths, shorter lifespan. It's explained every time you engage in some sinful activities, you use up more breaths. Therefore, you shorten your lifespan. Like that, everyone, especially those who are sinful, who are fearful, who become angry, use up more and more breaths, and therefore the lifespan becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. And Prabhupada's coming back to the reality that no matter how you try to extend your life scientifically, it's based on your number of breaths. And ultimately, even as a yogi, if you have to extend your breathing and hold your breathing, you still have to die one day. No one lives eternally. That is the law of creation, at least of the material creation. Every demon who, that was trying to get benedictions from demigods would ask, please make me immortal. And Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, they themselves would say, sorry, we ourselves are in the cycle of creation and annihilation. There is no way we can make you immortal. So immortality is not granted. But if you go out of this material world and go back to the spiritual world, that's where you live eternally. Why? Because they're the soul. And Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita talks about the soul who is Sanatan, the world that is Sanatan, our service that is Sanatan, Krishna is Sanatan. So there, that is the Sanatan world. That is where we all have to go. So we want to be attentive to this aspect of trying to free ourselves from the clutches of death. Then Prabhupada continues, what to speak of stopping death? No one can enhance the short period of life even by a fraction of a moment. Not the only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy names of the Lord. The only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. Yamaraj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited to kirtans and sacrifices by the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in devotional service of the Lord. So every time we have a kirtan mela, we should send an invite to Yamaraj on behalf of Srila Prabhupada. Tell him, Yamaraj, on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, we're inviting you to kirtan. And when Yamaraj comes there, he'll be in the kirtan. Therefore, nobody would meet the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj, because he'll be engrossed in kirtan. Thus, the great sages headed by Shaunak and others invited Yamaraj to attend the sacrifice performed at Naimisharanya. This was good for those who did not want to die. So, Yamaraj is a great devotee. In fact, we know in the Bhagavatam, we'll come to it in the 6th canto, when the Yamadutas got defeated by the Vishnu Dutas, and they went, here we see in the picture, when they went back to Yamaraj. Yamaraj was in ecstasy when he heard that they could not take a Jamil, because now Yamaraj had the great fortune and opportunity to speak about the glories of the holy name. Text 8. Na kaschin mriyate tavad yavad asta hihantaka etad artham hi bhagavan ahuta paramar shibi aho nriloke piyeta harililamrita vacha. As long as Yamaraj, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. The great sages have invited the control of death, Yamaraj, who is the representative of the Lord. Living beings who are under his grip should take advantage of hearing the deathless nectar in the form of this narration of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Purport. Every human being dislikes meeting death, but he does not know how to get rid of death. The surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastime of the Lord, as they are systematically narrated in the text of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this cause of life as recommended by the rishis headed by Shaunaka. So the surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastime of the Lord as they are systematically narrated in the text of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is why Srila Prabhupada gave us Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, to hear the glories of Krishna. Why? Because it is the remedy for death. If we hear and develop a taste, and again, it means cultivation. We need to cultivate the habit of hearing. So often we become so engrossed in service and we use, oh, I'm too busy serving, to not hear Krishna Katha, to not make that mistake. Yes, service is important. Services nourish our desire to hear. And hearing Krishna Katha nourishes our desire to serve. Both must be there. If you just serve, you are going to have a challenge when you're on your deathbed. Look at the glorious example of Kadambakanan Swami. He would, when he was the temple president in Vrindavan, he would get up before Mangalarti and finish his 16 rounds before Mangalarti. And then before the morning program, he would have read for 2 hours. So every day he was constantly hearing and chanting his rounds early in the morning. And then rendering service. So fully absorbed. And for such a person, Prabhupada is making it very clear, surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself. He had become accustomed to that practice. See, you can't practice this at the time of death. It's like saying, going back to our example of flying the plane, right? We can't say, okay, I'll fly the plane when I'm leaving. Like, I'm dying now, let me fly the plane. No, you have to learn how to fly the plane. So flying the plane means becoming accustomed to hearing the glories of Krishna. At the time of death, we need to retain the glories of Krishna. And we should have already have developed a desire to hear. So very wonderful instruction given by Srila Prabhupada we should take to heart. He's giving us the formula to cure death, to avoid death. If you are to go to your friends, your colleagues, and tell them, do you know how to cure death? They'll say, you're crazy. Nobody can cure death. Then you ask them, do you like to die? No, I don't want to die. Okay, so you don't want to die, and there's no solution to death. That's going to be a very, very miserable situation. We also don't want to die, but we know we're going to face death, and we have a solution to avoid it. How? Cultivate, practice, become accustomed to hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord. Someone might say, well, I don't have taste. No problem. Even if you don't have taste, sit and hear. Develop a habit. Nothing in this world, is like a child. A child who's very educated on his first day did not like to go to school. But he had to cultivate a habit. When we do anything different, there's always an uneasy situation in the beginning. So we have to keep at the practice, understanding the benefit. And for this, Srila Prabhupada has given us, because somebody may say, okay, so I need to cultivate a habit of hearing, great. But unfortunately, there's no scripture to hear. If Prabhupada did not give us the Bhagavatam, we would not have the material to sit and hear. But he has given us the direction of what we should do to cure death. And he's also given us the content that we should actually associate with Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada said, everything you need is in my books. And we can see practically here, Prabhupada is giving us the direction and he's giving us the content. He's giving us his mercy in disciplic succession. What more could we ask? This is the greatest wealth. This is the greatest blessing. There is nothing more for us to really ask for than this. And if we apply this in our life, it means we are accessing the eternal realm of the spiritual world. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this cause of life, as recommended by the Rishi, headed by Shonaka. So really, we have to seriously meditate, contemplate, think about this. So for this coming week, every day, just meditate and contemplate on this point. I could die at any moment. I need to try to cultivate the habit. And here's the most glorious part. Start cultivating the habit even from today. Even if you do not perfect the habit of hearing Bhagavatam, that means you don't have that great taste to hear for 8 hours, 24 hours, 7. I mean, look at March Parikshit, 7 days, 7 nights he heard. Let's say we have not cultivated that habit of hearing, but we start at 10%. Glorious. Because next life, you continue from 10%. And in your next life, your situation will be millions of times more auspicious and more glorious than now. Even materially. I'll give you an example. Scripture says in glorifying wearing tulsi neck beads. If anybody has tulsi neck beads around their neck, every grain that they consume gives them the equivalent of performing a horse sacrifice. Now, when you perform a horse sacrifice, you get inconceivable amounts of punya, of piety. Punya or piety is subtle wealth, which then leads to gross wealth. So that means just by Prabhupada's mercy and guidance and instruction, we are wearing tulsi neck beads. And every grain that we consume that passes through a throat that has neck beads is giving you inconceivable amount of devotional and material pious credits. Which means in your next life, even if you have to take birth again, you take birth in the most auspicious, most pious, and most wealthy circumstance. Why? So that in that auspicious, wealthy, pious situation, you will have no material anxiety, where you can now from birth sit and hear. And from birth, you'll be in ecstasy, hearing Krishna Katha. All because you have started the journey of hearing Krishna Katha by the direction of Srila Prabhupada. So don't be in anxiety that I didn't finish my journey. It doesn't matter. Start the journey and be serious about the journey of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing the glories of Krishna. Take it seriously. And if we take it seriously, our future is bright, supremely bright. It is said that anyone who bathes, like if you take a normal bath with neck beads, it is described that you are getting the benefit of bathing in all the auspicious holy rivers. So like that, there's so many spiritual benefits, inconceivable spiritual benefits. We have absolutely no clue. If you really had to know what Prabhupada has actually done for every single one of us by giving us Krishna consciousness, we would faint. We would actually faint. It's inconceivable. 9. Mandasya manda pragnasya vayo manda yusas chavai nidraya hriyate naktam diva chai vyartha karma be. Lazy human beings with paltry intelligence and a short duration of life, pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities that are for naught. Prabhupada's purport. Less intelligent do not know the real value of human form of life. Human form is a special gift of material nature in the cause of her enforcing stringent laws of miseries upon the living beings. It is a chance to achieve the highest boon of life, namely to get out of the entanglement of repeated birth and death. Look at Prabhupada's choice of words. It is a chance to achieve the highest boon of life, namely to get out. You know, you tell somebody, just get out. It's like, I don't want to listen. I don't want to hear you, just get out. It's like you're really upset with the person. You want the person to get out right now. Prabhupada could have used many, more polite words, right? To leave, namely to leave the entanglement, to come out, to get out. It's like, yes, this is not a place, as Prabhupada says, for a gentleman. So this is what human form of life is designed for. It is meant for, to get out of the entanglement of repeated birth and death. The intelligent take care of this important gift by strenuously endeavoring to get out of the entanglement. The intelligent take care of this important gift. That means you're taking care of this important human birth, human form, and you're using this human form very, very strenuously, nicely, effectively to get out of this entanglement. But the less intelligent are lazy and unable to evaluate the gift of the human body to achieve liberation from material bondage. They become more interested in so-called economic development and work very hard throughout life simply for sense gratification of the temporary body. So don't fall prey to these obstacles. Laziness, not using our intelligence to understand the gift we are given. Just interested in making money, 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 and nothing else. Money is important. Money is required. Money is essential. But money is not the basis of everything. It is not the perfection of life. And then simply engaging in sense gratification, working hard for sense gratification, it is not the aim of life. Sense enjoyment is also allowed to the lower animals by the law of nature. And thus, a human being is also destined to a certain amount of sense enjoyment according to his past or present life. But one should definitely try to understand that sense enjoyment is not the ultimate goal of human life. Herein it is said that the duration of daytime, one works for nothing because the aim is nothing but sense enjoyment. We can particularly observe how the human being is engaged for nothing in the great cities and industrial towns. There are so many things manufactured by human energy, but they are all meant for sense enjoyment and not for getting out of material bondage. And after working hard during the daytime, a tired man either sleeps or engages in sex habits at night. That is the program of materialistic civilized life for the less intelligent. Therefore, they are designated herein as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. So we do not want to follow in those footsteps. We really want to heed Prabhupada's instructions. His Holiness Kadamakanand Swami shared, he said, it's like we got 3 balls that we are juggling. First, we are juggling the ball of physical well-being, mental and physical well-being. Then we're juggling the balls of sadhana and bhajan. And then the third ball is the ball of mission. And sometimes when you're juggling these 3 balls, some balls are higher in the air and the other one then comes to your hand. And in this way, they circle. So like that, sometimes your sadhana goes, more inspirational, the mission goals more inspirational, etc. But all three are important in life. We want to have good health, be at least materially have the bare necessities, so that body and mind is peaceful. We got what we need to practice spiritual life. Then we want to use our time valuably for spiritual sadhana and bhajan, and develop a taste for that. And then the third, be involved in the mission. In this way, by trying to manage these three aspects of our life, we would be taking full advantage of this human form of life and be able to perfect our life and conquer death and go back to the spiritual world, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. Are there any questions or comments anyone has? Please type in the chat. Any reflections? We'll just give a minute or two. Shivananda Prabhu says, thank you for taking time and effort to put all this together and share with everyone. The instructions and knowledge in the purports are really full proof of everything we need to live in this world perfectly. Amazing how Srila Prabhupada penned all this down while doing so many other activities to set up the movement worldwide. These pastimes of March Pariksha are really wonderful to hear. Thanks, Prabhu. Yes, it is. In fact, when we really analyze what Prabhupada did, it's impossible for any ordinary person to achieve that. It's really, really impossible. Prabhupada practically never slept. And as I mentioned previously, I can say it for myself. I wouldn't, and if I don't sleep for one day, next day is a disaster. If I have to get up, just like when we do daily service, then I have to be up at 1 so that at least I can chant my rounds, because I'm going to miss the japa period. And then we go and render the service. When I come back, it's exhausting. I need to catch up some sleep, otherwise I'll be out of it. If we go for another program, and sometimes we extend ourselves, we go for another program, but then you have to catch up the sleep. And if you look at Srila Prabhupada, from 11 o'clock till 4 o'clock, he would translate. He may have 2 hours sleep in the evening, have 45 minutes to an hour sleep during the day, and that's it. And rest of the time, Prabhupada was giving Krishna consciousness in so many ways. And the most valuable time that we use for resting, Prabhupada used that time in giving the most valuable gift of Srimad Bhagavatam. That means if we really don't take advantage of Srimad Bhagavatam, we are not reciprocating with Prabhupada's efforts. We're not being grateful for Srila Prabhupada's sacrifice. We're letting Srila Prabhupada's sacrifice go in vain. And that we cannot allow, especially if we are followers of Srila Prabhupada. If we love Srila Prabhupada, we cannot let his sacrifice go in vain. So yes, it is amazing how Srila Prabhupada, wrote all this and set up a worldwide movement. It is definitely empowerment. Someone who is empowered by Krishna, somebody who's connected to Krishna. Mother Sharanya says, I wasn't aware of the benedictions wearing tulsi beads. Thank you for sharing. Yes, there's many benefits. In fact, for example, if you even think about Navadvip, Mayapur, Vrindavan, if you just say the words, inconceivable benefit is there, purification is there. It's like when you repeat the holy names of Krishna, inconceivable benefits are there. We cannot perceive it, but the benefits are definitely there. So Prabhupada had firm faith in all these aspects that if we simply do what he gave us, then we actually will be living in this world blissfully, no matter what comes in terms of obstacles. And we're going to go through, right? When we hear the pastimes of Maharaj Parikshit, right now, Prabhupada is laying the foundation, and we need to be able to extract these essential instructions and put them as foundation in the core of our being and consciousness. That's why contemplation is very important. Every week, when we're going through these purports, there are certain powerful statements that Prabhupada makes, powerful instructions that Prabhupada makes. Take those instructions and contemplate on them for the whole week. Meditate on them, bring them, write them down and contemplate. When you contemplate on these points, they dive deeper and deeper into your psyche, into your consciousness. Then it becomes part of your nature. It starts to allow you to act on those instructions. So it's very important that we cultivate this habit of contemplation for us to maintain. If you want to retain something, you need to contemplate on it sufficiently. So very important. And by the contemplation, more and more, as we proceed from chapter to chapter, we are building one contemplation upon the other, one foundation upon the other. In this way, Prabhupada is molding our whole life in the most amazing Krishna conscious way. And if we systematically follow this process and seriously apply, it is guaranteed for us to go back to the spiritual world by Prabhupada's mercy, simply by following Prabhupada's instructions. Because Prabhupada also made the point in one lecture, which I shared during the Gurpurnim festival, that if one seriously tries to serve the mission of Lord Chaitanya, then even at the time of death, whatever shortcomings are there, Lord Chaitanya will reconcile the shortcomings. So it does not mean we need to be 100% perfect. We're striving to be 100% perfect. And we're striving to be sincere and serious. And even if we fall short, Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, they will reconcile the shortness. No, he was very sincere. Okay, he's got only 70%. Don't worry. Pass him 100%. Give him. This is the mercy. If we seriously, sincerely practice and follow. Mother Lash, thank you for the Krishna Kada. Beautiful, very beautiful, very thought-provoking class, especially scratching the surface only. Hear what Prabhupada has given us. It's truly jewels and the greatest wealth indeed. Thank you, very grateful. Thank you very much, Mother Lash. Hemavati Vadika, brilliant class, shows us the power of the holy name and Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mother Hemavati Vadika. Bafana Prabhu, how one moves the neck beads without initiation didn't go hand in hand with taking on initiation. So, Bafana Prabhu, I didn't get your question, but in relation to initiation, you do not need to be initiated to wear neck beads. There are scriptural instructions of anyone wearing neck beads. Naturally, if somebody is serious and sincere, he would know that the neck beads is actually Tulsi, and therefore to honor Tulsi, I want to try to practice nicely. But anyone can wear neck beads. It is all auspicious. Ram King Prabhu, Hare Krishna. I like your analogy of milk is physically and spiritually nutritious. But if milk is touched by the lips of envy, ego, and exploitation, then milk is no more valuable and for consumption. I also like the point of inviting Yamaraj to our chanting and hearing programs to conquer death. Also, the benefit of wearing Tulsi Mala. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much, Kinka Prabhu. Yes. Prabhupada often warned us in terms of the milk. That is why we should be very careful in terms of even, just not hearing kirtan from anywhere, because I like the tune, so I hear it. Yes, at the same time, we have to also understand the practice of that person chanting, because that plays an important part in the purification. See, we are not just hearing for sense gratification. We are hearing for purification. We are hearing to conquer death. Now, Prabhupada already warned us, right? In the purport, Prabhupada already warned us that if I use human form of life for sense gratification, it's an obstacle. I'm going to come back. So if I fall into the trap of hearing kirtan and the glories of Krishna for sense gratification, that becomes a trap. Now it's better to hear kirtan and the glories of Krishna for sense gratification than mundane sense gratification. But I still don't want to fall in the trap where I'm interested in the tune, I'm interested in the, let's say the class, okay, the jokes that this person is saying in the class, etc. I'm losing the essence behind the Krishna Katha, behind the kirtan. And what is the essence behind the kirtan or Krishna Katha? It is the purity of purpose. Prabhupada's purity of kirtan, when he was in 21 in Thompson Square Park, Prabhupada was not chanting for sense gratification. He was not chanting to attract a crowd. Prabhupada said, simply chanting to attract Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna. So like that also, we should be very careful in our own spiritual habits, that we don't fall prey even within the realm of spirituality, in the spiritual institution, in the spiritual society, that, oh, everything, for example, because it's created in the institution, it must be right. No, because it's created in the institution doesn't necessarily have to be right. There may be ill intentions, or there may be even be poison behind there. We have to also use our intelligence and understand, so that we can, that's why Prabhupada said we should be thoughtful. We shouldn't just take things blindly. And then the point of Yamaraj, yes, that is definitely a very interesting point Prabhupada is sharing. And because Prabhupada is making that point, what do you think Yamaraj was doing? Or rather, whenever Prabhupada would be giving a class or was giving a class, guess who was there? Yamaraj was there. The demigods were there. Narmuni was there, taking Prabhupada's association. Similarly, we can also send an invite. It's a good practice. Now, somebody may think, oh, let's send an invite, and that means that nobody's going to die. Nope. Somebody may die, even during Krishna Katha. But if somebody dies during Krishna Katha, just like in Louis Tirkhat, when in the early days, in the 70s, late 70s, when the devotees were preaching, they were traveling in South Africa, then they went to Louis Tirkhat. And there, the devotees, Prabhupada disciples, they had a program in Louis Tirkhat. And there was a gentleman where they were staying. he liked to play tabla. So they were having kirtan, and this gentleman was playing tabla on the in the kirtan on the stage, and the kirtan was vibrant and ecstatic. And right there in the kirtan, while playing tabla, he died. So that's glorious. That's glorious. So it's not like in kirtan or in Bhagavad Katha, you won't get devotees dying. No, but if they die during that devotional service, that's the most wonderful way to leave this world. It's glorious. But yes, for devotee, he doesn't fear. Why? Because Prabhupada has given us the formula to go over death. So whether Yamaraj is there or not there, the fact is, if we hearing Krishna Katha, there is no death for us. Kadama Swami Maharaj says, death simply means a change of service. That's all. So for devotee, he's not scared of dying. Simply mean a change of service. Oh, I was doing book distribution. Now I need to do this service, or I'm doing daily service. I have to do this service. I'm just changing my service. So death simply means I'm changing service. Service continues. All right. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback. And we will continue next week with the life and pastimes of Maharaj Parikshit. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai